Moral relativism. We're living with it. It's all around us. It's in the way we tend to think or talk. It's certainly in our social circles and the way people tend to think and talk about faith, about morality, about different things. But the different types that exist, I'm going to define 4 for you, and so that we can understand them and begin to spot them in the world around us. By the way, all of these come from the book that Greg Koukl co-wrote with Francis Beckwith, who I quoted a little while ago, called Relativism, Feet Firmly Planted in Midair, the best treatise on this subject I've ever found. And then you can follow your footnotes from there if you really want to dive in deep. The first type of relativism that is out there that we see, Greg and Frank would call society does relativism. Society does relativism. The formal name would be cultural relativism. So if you guys have ever taken an anthropology class when you were in college, or for those who are planning to go to college and you're going to take a class like that, you will run into cultural relativism. The notion here is that because a society does it this way, that's the way it ought to be. Oh, well, our society does things this way, but that society does it differently, and that one does it differently than them. Who are we to say that they're wrong or that we're better? Society does relativism. It's kind of a majority rules idea. Might makes right. That society, the majority do it that way, so therefore that's the way it ought to be for that society. We can't tell them what's right or wrong or what's good or better or any of those things. After all, with moral relativism, you guys, there is no objective standard. There's no such thing as better. There's only preference. Many who are talking about cultural relativism will say, well, there's no consensus out there on what is true, so therefore there's no truth. It's a little bit like what Tim was talking about last night with the cars, right? Like the 2 different types of cars might describe the car that he drives. They cannot both be right. They might both be wrong. But it doesn't mean there's no truth out there. As Hadley Arkey's brilliant thinker would tell us, the absence of consensus does not mean the absence of truth. So society does relativism. All it can really do is describe to us the way another society does it. That's it. It can't prescribe anything to us. In other words, we can't get from this society is this way to we ought to be this way. That's a leap that we can't make. So cultural relativism, society does relativism, simply describes other societies. It can't tell us anything about what we ought to do. It can't prescribe. The second type of relativism that is out there is called society says relativism. Now, this one is a little bit different than society does because this one is more like the social contract idea. The formal name would be conventionalism. Conventionalism. So society says relativism. Each society decides or determines for itself what is right or wrong. Morality is reduced to kind of this social contract. Now, the problem with society says relativism is that if society says relativism is true and each society decides for itself, makes its contract, that means that there is no such thing as an immoral society. There can't be. There's no standard by which to compare. Each one just decides for itself. One society wants to enslave women. We can't tell them what's right or wrong for them. That's their contract. One society wants to practice racial genocide. Well, that's up to them to decide for themselves. There's no such thing as better. Who are we to judge? Not only does it mean that there's no such thing as an immoral society, this type of relativism also means that there is no such thing as an immoral law in a given society. After all, the society decided for itself which laws it should have. Therefore, by definition, all of its laws are the final measure of morality. All of its laws are moral. This does a couple of things. We've seen this experiment play out in the Nuremberg trials. This is the appeal of the Nazis who were on trial, this type of conventionalism. We were just doing what was decided upon by our given society. These were the rules put in place for us. Thankfully, that was not accepted. But it also means that if all of a society's laws are by definition moral, because that's the final measure of morality, that no society can be improved. After all, its laws are already moral. There's no such thing as better. There's no such thing as improving. It can only be changed. But it does mean that those that we would rightly celebrate as moral reformers, people like Martin Luther King Jr., people like Corrie ten Boom and Gandhi and Andre Trocmé, the pastor in the French mountains whose village rescued, like 5,000 Jews and others. These people would be, under this view, by definition, immoral because they challenged the laws of their given society. The third type of relativism that we'll define, we have now society does relativism, society says relativism. The third one is the most common one we probably see. It's called I say relativism. The formal name is individual ethical relativism. I say relativism. Similar to society says, but instead of the final measure of morality being in the society and its agreed upon laws, in I say relativism, the final measure of society is what the individual defines. This is my truth. You live your truth. Live your best life, although there's no such thing as best or better, if moral relativism is true. Also similar to society says relativism, the problem with I say relativism is that there's no such thing as an immoral individual. Only differences in preferences. So what this one would mean is that there's no real difference between someone like a Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler. The best this view can give us is that one preferred to feed children and one preferred to torture and kill them. Remember, there's no such thing as better. There's no standard. I say relativism leaves us with its greatest champion being a sociopath, when my truth trumps everybody else's such that I survive. Finally, the fourth kind of relativism I want to go into today, because of our current cultural moment, is called I can't say relativism. I can't say relativism. This is the reason I took you on that little historical joyride and talked about people like Immanuel Kant and A.J. Ayers, because I can't say relativism. The formal name is Epistemological relativism, dealing with what we can know. I can't say relativism says that we can pretend that right and wrong are real, but we cannot get at it because we're trapped behind something, whether it's our senses or our language communities. And right now, given what we've heard already from my friend Monique and others, we have all kinds of this running rampant, particularly on our university campuses and throughout the media. This notion of you can't understand me because you are trapped behind something. Just like I would ask those other brilliant people from the past, I would ask these people, how do you know that? Wouldn't you be trapped behind whatever that thing is as well? How did you break out and see that for all of the rest of us? This type of relativism is particularly insidious, I think, because it attacks right at the heart of what we are as human beings. This type of relativism, the I can't say relativism, that says that you are stuck in your own perspective and you can't break out of that to understand or connect with anybody else, is one that says that you have no such thing as a common human nature that you share with others. The imago Dei status that was endowed to you, that's not really real. Nor do you have any kind of imagination that can help you understand. This type of relativism seeks to divide and isolate, and that's exactly what it's doing. So in a world that used to be, particularly the educational world, where it used to be a courageous thing that you set out to be exposed to so many different ideas, such that when you test your ideas against those, your ideas are either made better and corrected, or you stand firm in them because you've seen what's out there and you go, no, this is what makes sense of the world. And now we live in a world where, don't you dare say something different. I will cancel you. I will literally erase you from existence because I create what is real. Ideas have consequences and bad ideas have victims. What we see at the end of the day when it comes to moral relativism is tearing us apart.